Welcome to another episode of the Coffee Break Podcast, where our mission here is to share business ideas, practices, and strategies while we enjoy our coffee. Today, well, we're getting real tactical. We've got a special guest, Lee Odess. He's joining us remotely from Bethesda, Maryland. He recently wrote an article all about ways that you can have a criteria to gauge your future success of your organization, future growth and development of your organization, and how it applies to the security industry. But that same criteria can be applied to whatever business and whatever industry that you're in. We're going to chat with him about that right after this.
We got so much to say. We got a podcast to make. We're sipping on lattes, and it's time for a coffee break. It's time for a coffee break. Oh, yeah.
So welcome to the Coffee Break Podcast. We're going to jump right into 5 rapid-fire questions. There are 5 randomly selected questions just to get under your skin with unknown point values. Are you ready?
Ready.
All right, here we go. Number 1, if you could be in the movie of your choice, what movie would you choose and what character would you play?
Oh, man, that's a good one. I would say Friday Night Lights.
Okay.
And any of them. For the quarterback, the running back, it doesn't matter. I just want to be on that team.
A sports character or just the team?
Well, on that team, sports character in that type of story. I'd love it.
There you go. Friday Night Lights, any sports character. I like it. Number 2, pick something out of your wallet or your pocket and share it with us and why it's important to you. You don't have to physically pick the item out, but you get the point.
In my wallet that's important to me, I guess. I mean, this is gonna be super boring, but it's the credit card, the ATM to pay for things. I mean, there's nothing. So I'm pretty minimal in my wallet. I don't carry a lot with it. If I could get rid of it, I would tomorrow. Yeah.
Well, we're getting closer to that. Hopefully
we are.
Man. All right. ATM card, most definitely important. Number 3, what work is most exciting to you here recently?
Well, recently with mine is, so it's this, and I think we're going to talk a little bit about it, but it's the shaping of what the industry is going to look like in the near to long-term future. I've been excited about taking a look at the crisis as it was. It's a bad thing, but then also an opportunity. So I'm planning on spending on how it's an opportunity, and that's what I'm most excited about.
Very cool. So it's interesting. I've had this conversation with a lot of people recently, but there's definitely so many negatives in a crisis situation, but it also crafts the future of society. It also crafts leadership. It really kind of crafts a lot of things outside of it, and it depends on what you're looking at and what you're focusing on. It's very interesting. So there can be positives that come out of it. It's just what you're focusing your attention on.
100%.
Number 4, one person, living or dead, you could have coffee with. Who would it be?
My grandfather.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. I would love to. It's one of those things, again, I just got the chills thinking about it, but I miss having conversations with, especially in times like now, to be honest. That's a guy I could talk to forever. He could give me insights. He's seen a lot, World War II, the whole thing. Right. So like he took this type of stuff. It was no big deal to him. So it would be nice to have that sort of comfort.
Yeah, most definitely. All right, last one, number 5. If you were an Olympic athlete, what sport would you compete in?
Oh, I'd be track. I'd love to do the sprint, like Usain Bolt. Like just the idea, it's got so much swag, and it's intense for like a short burst of time.
Yep.
I would love. I'm the complete opposite of being able to do that, but I would love to be able to run like that.
That's awesome. All right, cool. Well, that's 5 rapid fire questions. You did fantastic. We'll give you a score of 812. So
I was shooting for 810, so we're good.
Okay, awesome. Glad we could meet the expectation there.
I beat him.
So kind of jumping into the topic for today, Lee, I really appreciate you joining us, and this is going to be kind of the new norm for us. So if you're watching this video, we're obviously virtual. You're in Bethesda, Maryland right now, correct?
Correct. Yes.
So, we appreciate you joining us remotely today, and we'll definitely have you in the studio once everything calms down and you make your pilgrimage down to North Carolina. But in the meantime, I know you've been spending a lot of time the exact way you are right now, sitting behind a microphone with headphones on, doing a lot of these Zoom meetings. So how has that been going for you?
It's great. I mean, I set my company up to do this before. What I'm interested, the feeling of it now is that it's exhausting, frankly. So I've been thinking about why it is. So there's like no breaks and the rest. So it's interesting. But all things considered, going great.
Well, I think it's a whole different it's a different format. So when you're in-person meetings all the time, you still have a little bit of a break. You have some natural breaks. You can between meetings or whatever, you're in the car. And with this, it can be one after another. But it's been really cool here for us because we've been able to use this platform, this studio, and this very similar thing for lots of stuff. So
correct.
Our team meetings happen this way now. A lot of our client-facing meetings, and then we're doing some outbound stuff as well. So it's really actually been very useful to have all of this technology at our disposal and to be able to apply it in different ways. So that's awesome. So the other morning, I was scrolling through LinkedIn, and I saw a post that you had flipped out there about the access control industry. And I want to be clear as we kind of get into this conversation that what we're about to talk about, the article that you wrote was very directive to the access control industry and the security industry that we're a part of. But I think that one of the things that caught my attention was the criteria and the way that you spoke about it is applicable to any business and is something for any industry to be focused on.
Yeah, absolutely. So the way, and I think part of that is due to the fact that I'm trying to bring a message that's about mainstream. I'm not trying to do an analysis on the industry based off of yesterday's things. I believe there was a phase change happening anyways before all of this happened, and definitely now coming out of this, it's definitely going to happen. So, and I also look at the external threats that have been coming into the business, which apply in a lot of places, things like, retailers and Amazon and whatnot. But so that could be applied anywhere, right? So when I was looking at this, I purposely wanted to apply it to what I thought mainstream phase change would look like in the criteria, and then take a look at the industry to say, okay, where do all of these go and map, which is in direct conflict with, on LinkedIn, I had some good conversations, direct conflict with how people view the industry right now. And some people, I think, first off, I don't know if people read, some people didn't even read it. They just saw the chart and they answered. Other people that did read it, and it creates a good conversation. It's just my view of how I view what it's going to take to disrupt and really accelerate adoption.
No, it seemed like there was a good comment thread happening, which is always a positive when you can engage in conversation with people. But it was, I think that is, people jumped in there, looked at their logo, and were like, hold on a second, why are we in this category? But right. Again, the criteria by which you applied this is really the focus point of it. They're great takeaways.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah. So you want me to break those down?
Yeah. So you've got 6 criteria that you're looking at companies. And again, I want to be very clear. I think this is applicable to any industry that you're in. But this is how you were kind of going through that. So kind of talk us through your 6 points of criteria.
Sure. So the first one that I looked at was market reach. And this was if your company had the opportunity to reach a very large number of not only the traditional customers that we have now, but beyond that. So that was criteria 1 that I looked at. Then I looked at technology, and I've been using this island analogy within our industry that our majority of our companies in the access control are set up on what I was calling old tech island. It's things like Prox cards and Wiegand and whatnot, right?
Yep.
And the marketplace that how I've seen it is in what I was calling today tech and tomorrow tech island, not future tech. Usually, if we go and talk about things from where we're currently at now, everyone wants to talk about the future, like robots and flying stuff and whatnot. And I'm not even there yet. I'm talking about today and tomorrow, where most of the marketplace, my belief is, thinks our industry is at, and then they dig into it and they're like, oh, we're not there yet. So I'm looking at the technology that, are you set up to either move to today tech island, or are you already on today tech island with the opportunity to go tomorrow? So that's the second one. Third one is innovation engine. So does your company have the essential building blocks built into it to allow the creation of reliable, strategic, focused innovation? So it's about, do you have an area that can create that type of stuff, and do you invest in it to allow it to happen? What I find is we're an industry of iteration, not innovation. And experimentation is not necessarily valued as much as I believe a mainstream organization needs to have it. So, but there's pockets. So was trying to look at that. The next one was marketing. Does your company value it and invest in it? We're an industry based off of product marketing, and that's about it. And so, a lot of these companies that are they don't even have a CMO, or, they've got a bunch of product marketing, which is fine. You need it. But there's also, there's a lot more, as as someone that does like what you do, you invest in it. That's a good example of, I think people need to start doing it. The next one is called the it factor. And I brought this down is, does your company have the ability to walk into a room and command attention and leave everybody wanting more? That comes back to the swag comment I made before. I do think it matters that there's a presence when you walk into a room. And I do think it matters that, like a herd effect of you hear about tribalism and the rest of it when it comes to mainstream adoption of products. People that don't focus on that I don't think understand it, and they don't value it, where I believe you need to. And then the last one is talent. And this isn't about, do you have the current talent now? This is about, can you attract the talent that you need for the future of what the products or the services and the marketplace are looking for? Yeah. So it's things like, are you, and you're finding out like now a lot too, can you do remote work? Can you find the data scientists? Are you in a market that maybe used to have fruitful amount of resources, but then now how do you go after, I don't know, like you don't have to be in the Bay Area, but can you attract it? Stuff like that.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for listening to the Coffee Break Podcast. If this information has been helpful to you, or you just really kind of like our theme song, can you help us out by rating us on whatever app you're using? And if you get really fancy, how about sharing a screenshot on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or LinkedIn? Okay, enough of all this. Let's get back to the conversation. So the only thing that I noticed on here on that list is that you if you were to switch the order here with technology and innovation engines, then you would have a great acronym, MITMIT. Just wanted to throw that out there.
Thank you. Speaking of marketing, thank you.
I'm writing that down. That'll just draw them in. But I think with what you just outlined, it is very effective when you start to dive into it, because all of those components there, you can just kind of run that through a filter. Market research, and are we positioning ourselves? Do we know, or market reach rather, or are we positioned to where we can get to the right customers? If we're only, I guess another way to look at it is, if we only play in this one circle, how are we going to ever get outside of that? Like, okay, so our company is really strong with this particular customer type or whatever, and there's no outside interaction whatsoever, then you will only kind of live in that circle and inevitably die in that circle.
Correct. And that's been our industry, frankly. That's why you've seen historical valuations of companies have been sort of, they get capped at a certain point because the addressable marketplace, and I think it's a lack of curiosity and a lack of imagination to figure out, but then it also, that drives the lack of development to reach that customer and to go after. A lot of times I find too, we do demographic studies and we don't do things like psychographic studies. So taking that same type, but maybe cutting it horizontally instead of vertically, to be able to look at and say, okay, how do I break out of and get into the white space? Back when I was at Lutron, they taught me this, right out of my first career, was they always talked about expanding beyond the core that you had. And that pie was nice. You wanted a lot of that. But in order to actually get that exponential growth, you had to figure out how to get beyond that.
Yep. Well, it's the theory of we're really big in the circle that we're in. Like, we're really big in the small pond, but when you get out into the ocean, nobody knows who you are. And so if you don't pay attention to that, if you're not focused on that, then you're short-living yourself, because that's probably a not correct terminology, but you've short-lived your lifespan, because as soon as you get outside of that small pond, then you're like, who knows you, right? The technology aspect of it is very intriguing, because I think the way that you approach this is very, very interesting. It's essentially people resting on their laurels, right? It's, well, we came up with this technology 15 years ago, so we're good, And the security industry specifically struggles with that a lot, because they have just said, well, we have this and it's okay and it's worked. Why fix something that's not broken? But they're not innovating.
Yeah, I mean, man, there's a lot here to this one too, in my belief. So it's a couple of things that I break it down. Is number one, our industry was built a lot of times off of a product that would be hung on the wall for 30 years.
Yep.
That was actually a value proposition, and which I get. It's not that it's wrong, that it's right, but when the paradigm shifts and you start to introduce new things like software and the desire for convenience to balance with safety and all of that stuff that happens, it takes just a different methodology that comes down on that end. The other driver of it, and this happens at both the manufacturing side and I believe at the dealer integrator side as well, is you invest so much time and money upfront on a technology that takes time to bring brought to market from a manufacturing end, that you need to start to then receive the fruits of that investment that you made.
Sure.
And a lot of companies switch to a value engineering process as soon as it goes in to try to get as much of margin they can get out of that product, and they invest in that versus investing in innovation. And then they also then are starting to chase requests that come in that create corner cases, if you would, because of that job that they want to get, which then again, you only can invest in so many places. So it's about discipline. It's about creating those spaces and not, starving them, and valuing innovation along with iteration.
That's, again, application outside of any of the specific industry that we're talking about is across the board, right?
Yeah.
Not thinking, getting yourself distracted. You just nailed like several different points there. Not getting distracted with so many different things that you just go, it's like, herding cats because you've got things going all over the place and you're not doing anything well. So that's one issue that you're going to run into. And the other part is taking so long to bring things to market. By the time you actually get it there, it's outdated already, right? And we've talked about that on this podcast, specifically the agile versus waterfall methodologies and how you can just kind of continue to iterate and get things out there and test it and have it work and then adjust to when it doesn't versus, we've been working on this for 4 years, and by the time we bring it to market, it's like, well, that's old already. Yep.
I'll give you that. I mean, majority of our industry, if you want a prime example of that, is around Bluetooth mobile technology.
All right.
So like that's like 10 years old at this point, and people are still introducing it today. And I appreciate that they're catching up on it. But again, I just think that's an example of where the industry could have progressed quicker. And I get why it happens. Like it's the discipline again to saying, we're going to figure out how to create spaces where you're going to allow certain people to work in certain functions and speeds. And maybe this group is agile because it needs it, and this group is waterfall because it needs it. You don't have to have a binary conversation where we either innovate or we iterate. We either do waterfall or we do agile. It's like, no, I think the metrics of how you deem success to be have to change. It's not about command and control anymore. It's not going to work where you have predictability everywhere. Like, in some of this comes from having no predictability. Like, experimentation is about no predictability. You smash stuff together and you see what pops out. If I bring it to the dealer side of what I've seen, what happens there too is, as an integrator or a dealer, a lot of times you invest so much time and money and you're chasing the backlog of work that you have that it's hard also to start to experiment when it goes to new technologies and new ideas, because that is seen as not as productive.
Yeah. Because
you've already associated the time allotments that you have to the current flow that you already have. And I haven't met an integrator that said, what I have is too many people and too much time.
Yeah.
So, but again, I think it applies there as well, of setting up the areas and the spaces to allow the innovation to happen.
Can you copy this key? That's a question we get asked about 3,422 times a year. And how can you actually be sure that the person who asked that question is supposed to get a copy of that key? Well, we think you should always know who can copy your keys to your business and your home, because it could be your neighbor, an old employee, a contractor, or even worse, your mother-in-law. At Loc-Doc Security, we believe in protected key systems, so you always know who has a copy of your key. To find out more, visit Loc-Doc.net or stop by our Charlotte location. Loc-Doc Security, helping you protect your people and your property. Well, I would agree with you, Lee, except for now. Now you hear integrators saying, I have too many people and too much time. And they're going, what can we do to innovate? And I've had conversations with multiple companies just over the past several weeks, and the theme is always the same. We've never had the need to innovate. We've never had the need to market. We've never had the need to do any of these things because we always have more work than we can handle. And we're just trying to mitigate what we have right now versus trying to go after more and to grow and to move into other markets. So it's like a little bit of that, of the short-sightedness. And then when it stops, then you're like, oh, okay, hold on a second. What do we need to do? So you're doing it out of necessity now versus proactive.
100%. Yeah. And I mean, I think there was very few people, rightfully so, I'm one of them, that, didn't necessarily do disaster planning. If you would have like, okay, when there's a pandemic, what are we going to do? Like there's some people that have, but not a lot of people did. But now you're trying to play catch up on that. And maybe hopefully that's something that comes out of this, is those spaces are created.
So the next component on your criteria is the innovation engines. And this is something I believe you can look at, again, the industry, the manufacturer side. You can look at the dealer side, the integrator side. You can look at any small business as a whole. And this is one that I think as a whole, this one and the next criteria that you have, marketing, is one that goes on the very bottom of the priority list, because it's what we're doing now is okay. We don't have to necessarily think about the future. So we're not necessarily being proactive. But the innovation engine, and I'd like to hear kind of your thoughts on this, is it's more like putting the infrastructure in place to handle this, to be able to bring it to life versus just thinking about it.
Well, yeah. And I mean, it's got a lot of there. So some of it is from a leadership standpoint, is prioritizing it, saying we're going to do this, and then getting out of the way and letting people do it. That's one way to do it. Other people that I've seen do it, they take an active role in doing it because it's a thing that they like to do. So depends on the structure of the organization. But I think it's the act of being a priority within the organization from the top down. It's valuing it and making it somewhat of an expectation that a percentage of the amount of time, the work, the revenue, whatever it might be, is going to be spent to this idea around innovation. And you hear the kitschy things like, failure is good, and go fast, break things, so whatever the logos and sayings that need to go around it. But truly understanding that and appreciating that stuff is what's going to differentiate and allow the status quo of what you have going on every day to actually start to be the new of how you get stuff done.
And building that structure to do it. I think that is the vital component. Is people don't, most companies don't allow, regardless of size, struggle with putting people in place that can handle that and basically implement that innovation. It's like, well, we can repurpose these people and you can have a couple of hours a week to work on it, rather than just, hey, here's dedication solely for innovation.
Yeah. And it's also, again, I think it's the command and control and the sort of the culture being created that supports this. Give you a good example is I was having a conversation with a manufacturer, and they're trying to figure out ways to creatively create content. Sure. And, two 60-year-olds and a 50-year-old trying to figure out whether they should use TikTok. And my answer to them was, why don't you stop doing that? And I don't know, there's probably like 20 people on your team that use TikTok right now, because your average outside salesperson and customer service person that you have was somewhere in the 20s and 30s. Why don't you just let them figure it out? Yeah. Like, bring them into it. But they probably don't believe that they have permission to do it, because if they were to come to you historically and be like, hey, boss, I think we should use TikTok, they're going to be like, what is that, A? And then B, just get back to work. And that to me is a fundamental shift, where thinking creatively with the resources that you have. I mean, to them, they probably don't even think coming up with an idea of how to use TikTok as actual work. So that's probably fun in a lot of ways to a lot of these people. So it's just like taking a step back, looking through a different lens, and allowing that the resources that you do have, think creatively.
So on a complete other note, are you on TikTok?
I'm personally not. My children do, so I watch them, and it's been an interesting thing to do. I'm encouraging myself to do so.
Yeah.
Because
if you do it, then I'm going to do it as well. So I'm just going to let you set the lead on that. But I was going to say, if you already have a TikTok account, I'm starting one right now so I can go watch what you got going on over there.
You know what? When we're done with this, I'm going to. Because actually, this isn't new. I mean, if you watch Gary Vee or any of these other people, they talk about it, that these platforms become the norm. Like at some point, someone said Facebook. Sure. And then all of a sudden it does. But it's figuring out how to use that. I've been reading about it. And the creativity is been pretty amazing. Yeah. And the virality around it. Now, I made a couple of weeks ago, I did I wrote up a blog around, I do think, so an area where you can have practical application, if you are looking to hire interns or you're looking to hire out of college, out of school talent, it's a great place to go to find talent.
So more of a recruitment tool.
Why not? I mean, if you can't go on college campuses now, right? It's a great way to create branding amongst those people and to show that it's a place to work, the personalities, that it's, all that stuff. So, yeah.
Very interesting. This is something we're going to have to dive into. All right. Next on your criteria is marketing. Does the company value it, invest in it, and practice it? A very challenging, forward-facing question. Well, what do you mean?
What do I mean is, like, do they put the wood behind the arrow on this one, where it's sort of, a lot of people I think look at it as an expense, and they look at it as something that happens. So if I'm speaking from the manufacturing side, sure, it's an expense, something that happens down the road when the product's ready to be released. It's like the people you get together that make cut sheets and talk about how you're going to launch and communicate, instead of like it's a strategic differentiator and partner. That can be a forward thinking that, and frankly, in some cases, maybe they're the people that take the product and actually help create requirements and the rest of it. But it's having that person have a seat at the table when it's, you see it now when things are getting tight. It's one of the first things that get cut, when I can make an argument it shouldn't be. And again, putting people in place. If you have a CMO, are they at the table on the leadership side? Are they being thought of as value add versus an expense? Do you understand communication? Like, that's part of it. Branding. Our industry, I don't believe, understands branding very much. It's still in the infancy. And there's some shining examples everywhere. And I actually don't think you have to do a lot to get a lot of return on an investment in this.
Well, I think it's interesting because, and you've kind of, we're referring to it, is, are you more focused on showing the widget? Or are you showing how the widget is applicable, or where the widget fits? And that's really, especially in the security industry, and part of that is based off of who they're marketing to. Are they marketing to the integrator, to the installer, to the dealer? Are they marketing to the end user, the person that's actually going to be utilizing it? But a lot of that is driven towards the installer, and so it's very widget focused. And it just is very unappealing.
Yeah, especially we're talking mainstream again, so that the context of this. So, sure. Are you speaking in value down to the consumer? I'll give you a good two examples. In the access control world, we were focused on seamless and frictionless access control. Our industry thought we nailed it, and then we come to find out it's actually about touchless. Yep. Same technology, same users. Totally different value proposition and way to communicate the value. I'm on the front end of missing this. So I take responsibility with a bunch of other people on us missing this, how to communicate properly of what was going to create value from them. So that's one example, I think, of how we missed a way to message to the marketplace to do it. The second one that I've seen is coming into this and working our way out of it, mm-hmm. is the ability for us to storytell as an industry is missed. We want to talk about, like, for instance, we call visitor management when that's not what it is. Like, I get it. Like, I get why we call it that, but it's a very technical, tactical marketing message that it's visitor management. And it's not. It's about identity and knowns and unknowns, and like the value creation that it makes. There's just a whole bunch that you can do. There's been some companies in our industry that have recently figured out how to make lockdown new and sexy. Yeah, and it's like, we've been doing that for, I don't know what, 50 years. Yeah, And all of a sudden, it's this new thing that people are talking about. And I think it comes down to the storytelling side of access control and marketing.
Most definitely.
Hi, I'm Sam Gray with Loc-Doc Security, and we want to give you 3 ways to reduce touch points in your office. Tip number 1 is keeping interior doors that are not a security risk open. One way you can accomplish this is a door closer with a hold open arm. Tip number 2 is you can consider switching to a motion activated light or a smart switch. Tip number 3 is using automatic door openers for your high traffic interior and exterior doors. You can do that by using Brivo Mobile Pass or motion activated buttons.
The next criteria, the it factor, does the company have the ability to walk into a room, command attention, and then leave everybody wanting more? Very interesting way to put that, especially in the security industry. It is a very interesting proposition. So expound on this a little bit more, because there's very few companies, especially in the security industry, that I would say does somebody have the ability to walk into a room and people still want more of it.
Yeah, I think it's room presence, it's swag, it's you know people want this product because it brings an image to them. There's been some examples of companies like that. A company like Envoy, for instance, did that really well. And it is a visitor management system. They had an iPad. It was sexy. It great UI, UX on it. People wanted that. You walked into a business and you didn't maybe know what they did, but you're like, oh, they're forward thinking. Look at this thing that they have, and then that company. So it's this essence that people have. They buy things that they want. I think our industry has forever been about safety and fear, which I get it. And that's what drove most of it. Now, though, we're moving, when it goes mainstream, it's about the value add and what's happening. I think our industry was asleep on this in some cases of, if you look at like the delivery side of everything that went on.
Yeah.
Our industry isn't the one that figured out that people want unmanned delivery. That was done outside of our industry, and we're playing catch up.
Yeah.
And the companies that were figuring that out, a lot of them have that it factor that I don't know what it is that Amazon, but I want part of that. I want to be in that because I don't want to be the person that didn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
And people look at me like I'm the Luddite that didn't do it. So I feel like there's a way for people to do that. It's funny. Somebody made a comment that if you look at my sheet, you could tell a lot just by looking at the logos that people do. And you can kind of tell if the company's got a little bit of it factor, as they appreciate marketing, just by looking at their logo. Is that fair?
That's very fair. Oh my. I'm looking at it right now and chuckling. But it is very true. And a lot of that comes in, if you use the Amazon analogy, Amazon is all about the transparency and visibility. And I think one of the things you kind of hit on it with the fear thing in our industry is that people focus on it from that direction versus how does this make your life better, because it gives you more visibility, more transparency, the ability to communicate better, the ability to know what's happening easier. And those are the value adds, because it makes your life better versus something that's just going to add more complication and confusion. Yeah.
And also then if you want to talk about attracting talent, people want to work at a place where it's got some swag, like that they get excited about, that they, if you look at the big companies like Nike and, Apple and companies like that, there's ways to emulate without having to be them that are the good parts of what they do. There's plenty of bad that they do, but if you look at the good parts of how they position themselves in the marketplace, those that figure out how to have a mainstream it factor, I believe, will be in a much better position than those that don't.
Most definitely. And that kind of wraps up your criteria. So as you were going through this, and now you've got all of this information on your website, which is group337.com. You
Yes.
can go in there and see the full analysis, but and you're continuing to evolve this, so you've got more information coming out on it. But it really is something that, again, I look back at, and I can run some of the things in our business through this criteria, and then you can also apply that to the bakery, the local restaurant, to the plumber, the HVAC company down the street, and how are they processing through this exact same criteria as well, to see how their business will fare out of kind of the downturn that we're walking through right now.
Absolutely. Well said. I mean, I look at a lot of the places that my wife and I, we frequent, and some of these, maybe I look at it and they relate to me of why I like those places as well. And I do believe that, like you said earlier, now is a wonderful time to take a look at some of this stuff and maybe just take the hour break on a whiteboard and run through the experience of just going through this to figure out if your company doesn't and see where gaps are. Yeah. And it's not a case of, if you don't have some of these things, it's not that anything's bad. Think of it as an evolution.
Yeah. It's an always improving. It's an area where you can look at and say, hey, okay, we got it. Now what can we do to adapt and get better at it? Because I can tell you any company has got room for improvement.
Absolutely.
But if you run it through this and start to kind of give yourself a scorecard, then you know what areas you probably want to focus on faster than others. So very, very cool. I appreciate you sharing this information on the MIT criteria and how you can apply that to your
It's already trademarked.
It's already done. You could also go MIT squared. I don't know if that would apply.
Well, MIT might have a problem with that.
Yeah. Or you can just MIT squared. I mean, I don't know. You play around with it, Lee.
I'll play with it.
You make it work. I appreciate you jumping on the video with us and having this conversation and sharing your insights. And if people want to find out more about you and what you've got going on, what's the best way to do that?
LinkedIn, Lee Odess there. They go to our website, Group 337. They could text me at 202-999-8180. I'm looking to engage like that with people. Those are great ways.
Well, and I will tell you, LinkedIn, you have been crushing it on LinkedIn. Lots of content, regular information out there, which has been creating engagement and value add content. So I definitely applaud that. It's something that more people should be doing.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And, there's been a lot of people that have influenced it. You're one of them. You were early onto this, so I appreciate what you're doing. You bring, I think, a good amount of value to people, as well as a distraction in a good way. So I appreciate what you are doing, getting the word out and just creating really good content.
Lee, thank you again for joining us today. For more information on Lee, you can visit group337.com, and he's got all kinds of great information there, articles and things for you to look at and read. If this is your first time listening or watching to this podcast because Lee posted it on LinkedIn, well, we appreciate you watching this and listening to this. And we wanted to let you know as well that you can subscribe to our video and audio podcast on our Facebook and YouTube pages. You can just go search for LOC-DOC and you'll find us there. Just hit the subscribe or follow button. And you can also find out more of the audio podcast on all of the major podcast platforms. Just go to locdoc.net/podcast. You can click on the links there. It'll take you to whatever platform you enjoy listening to it on. And if you're listening on iTunes right now, on the iTunes podcast platform, we just ask you to give us a 5-star review and let us know that you're listening, and it'll help get the word out to other people. If you are watching this or listening to this, take a screenshot and share it on your social media. Tag us in it. We definitely would appreciate that. And we look forward to seeing you next time right here on the Coffee Break Podcast.